Hello everyone. So let's talk about making a plan. One of the first things the potential off-grid family can do is to get an idea of what you use and how much of it that you use. As a part of that process, you should also ask yourself why you use each item and what alternatives are available. Many of these things we do just because we have always done them, and many foods we eat just because we've always eaten it. For gardeners, this means that many people just grow whatever they feel like growing and in whatever amount of the current garden size and conditions allow. Many gardeners put more thought into having a garden than they do into what they will grow and how they will grow it. Crops that take up a lot of space and only produce a small amount of food and only for a short amount of time are usually the first things that need to go. Some other crops that you may have never tried or that may not currently be a part of your diet may need to be adopted by you and your family. Okay, well, let's talk more about food preservation and food storage. It is important to mention that you ought to plan your food storage as you are planning your food garden. Plan out what you will grow and how it will serve you throughout the entire year. Some questions to ask yourself. Question 1, what is your food storage capacity and in what ways will you plan on storing food? Number 2, what and how much do you plan on growing for fresh picking and how much for storing? And number 3, what do you plan on growing to preserve for the cold winter months? For storage purposes, try to pick out one major product every year and heavily focus on growing a lot of that one product each year. That product ought to be, like, number 1, a major food source for the family, something you will eat a lot of. Number 2, something that stores or preserves well. And number 3, something that you can produce a lot more of than you can consume in 1 year. For example, 1 year that product can be green beans, the next year it can be onions. By growing a lot of one particular food in a year, we can often grow several years' supply of that one food, which will allow us to use our land and resources for other purposes in subsequent years. As far as growing food, there are as many opinions as there are growers. The main point I want to make is it is one thing to be able to grow some great veggies or awesome marigolds. It is quite another to purposely work towards providing a majority of the food for your family so that you do not have to buy food at stores, which is the goal of off-grid agrarians. Be aware that many of those pictures of gorgeous gardens that you see on Instagram or catalogs are actually the product of industrialized production using grid water and grid power, even if they advertise themselves as organic. So don't be green with envy when you see some suburban homestead blogger bragging about their abundant crop and lush garden. We know that if the water or the power gets turned off, that person is going to be in just as much need and in just as much peril as their store-dependent neighbor. Much less space is necessary for a small subsistence farm than most people think. I'm convinced that a pretty large family can live and survive providing near close to maybe 100% of their own non-meat food on only a few acres or less. As I mentioned before, any good subsistence farming and gardening plan needs to be combined with ample food storage. Root cellars are a necessity, especially here in the hot South. We will also need dry storage, some barns, outbuildings for drying and curing foods, and spring house, ice house, and smoke houses. It is a great feeling to be able to go directly to your garden for a meal, and I relish in such times. But I have to keep in mind that food production is for the whole year and is necessary for our survival, safety, and security. God provides these things for us because He cares about us and loves us, and our labor is bestowed for His glory alone. God's provision is in allowing us to work for Him, in providing our necessities, constantly puts us in remembrance of Him and His goodness and kindness towards us. We pray to Him to wean us from the store and to provide for us. It is God that has commanded us to till the soil and to work the land, and we all should do that diligently and gratefully. In conclusion, there will always be some products we will not be able to produce. We cannot produce salt, although we do get salt in our diets from a lot of the foods we produce. We do not have a salt mine on our land, so we buy and store large amounts of salt. God created us with minds and with the ability to solve problems. We have to divorce ourselves from the consumer mentality and industrial mindset that has crippled our individual creativity, convincing us that everything around us must come from a store. The industrial system paralyzes men and makes them increasingly dependent on the beast system, while simultaneously convincing them that they are better off than their ancestors and more advanced. So the blind, mentally atrophied cripple has now become convinced that he is better off than those who came before him, which were men who could think, see, and work fruitfully to provide the necessities of life for themselves and their families. Is there a greater deception than that? Okay, that's it for now. Thumbs up if you want to see more videos like this one. And remember, a simple life is a beautiful life.